Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 89. In this episode, we have longtime friend and returning guest, Mike Walling, joining us. Mike has been one of our instructors since we've opened up our virtual doors and is a very talented animator. We've had him in on a podcast before, right after, I think, Croods. But it was a really neat opportunity to get him back in on this podcast since that time. He's done feature animation at the highest level at DreamWorks, where he's worked on such movies as Croods, Kung Fu Panda 2. Prior to that, over at Sony on one of my favorites, Surf's Up. But one of the neat parts about getting him on this podcast again is that he's since made the transition over to games animation and has been animating over at Bungie on Destiny 2. And he's a great guy. It was a really neat podcast to kind of just hear his vantage point in regards to feature film, game animation, and just where those kind of blur together a little bit there. So definitely check this one out. Mr. Walling, I really appreciate you joining us on this podcast. It's really a neat opportunity. I know we've had you in on before, but this is particularly unique for me. Just for those that don't know, we opened our virtual doors back in 2010. I was one of the first classes there, and I had this gentleman here for Feature Workshop 2, and it was just a fun time, a neat time. We had some really cool students, and it was just very, very unique. So it's really cool to be able to get you in on this podcast. So
yeah, wow,
it's a long time, huh?
Yeah, it's been a while. Amazing though. Amazing.
But that was just fun time. It was just, it's one of those times you kind of look back, you think about high school, you think about college or something like that. That's kind of what I do there. It's just, it was a really cool time.
It was. Yeah, I mean, it was a brand new thing, and it was exciting, and trying to figure out what it was, and bringing people in, and then of course that having that first batch come through as well. Like, where are they going to end up? Where are they going to go? And I've seen some people, fairly recently. My brain's skipping a beat here, but you had a ex-student recently on a podcast, I think, who was in one of my first classes as well. Who's now an animation director.
Oh wow.
Gosh.
If you remember, let it holler at us on that.
Yeah, but it's really cool to see, people having gone on into careers,
right,
and become animators, or in some cases, like, animation directors.
Yeah.
Head of character animation people, just doing amazing stuff.
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
Now there's so much opportunity right now. It's incredible.
Yeah. We just had Alexis Winteroy and we're going to get him on another podcast too, which is cool. But just their Arcane that they recently released from over there, and just seeing the list of iAnimate students that he's had in the class or that's gone through our program and who had worked on that. And it is really just a neat honor to see that. So
it's amazing, man.
Really cool.
Like I think this year alone, I've seen more companies hiring associate animators than I've ever seen.
How would an associate animator be defined?
As a beginner out of school.
Okay.
Someone with no or little experience.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So it would be like, like for example, Bungie, we have a tendency to hire only senior people for years, just senior people, because of the responsibility, because of the product, because of the timeline, all of it, the technology, the technicality of it. And then this year we're hiring associate animators.
Okay.
And it's exciting because you're bringing people in who have the potential there already. And then you can kind of mold them into the kind of animator that would work with the organization,
right,
and the team. And you can give them these tools that we're all passionate about. Like, we're very passionate about efficiencies and hotkeys, tools, things that just like, why work hard? Like, work smart. Here's a bunch of stuff. Now go make cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Cool content, And it frees you up to take risks, because, you're not burning your wheels and taking all this time to figure things out, but you have a lot of tools at your disposal to work quickly.
So you found that to be the case then, that it's given you a little bit more time to kind of figure things out and kind of experiment.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to digress a little bit here, but one of the things that I'm super excited about is that coming to Bungie games aside, right? Just the organization and the people I was working with, I'm working with still to this day. They watched me work for the first year of my stay at Bungie, and they were quietly like, "Hey, you might want to think about Hotkeys." No, I'm okay. I'm all right. Don't worry about me. Well, what are you doing with those breakdowns right there? Well, that's how I break my poses down. Don't worry about it. And then finally one day I turned to my buddy Drew and I go, "Okay, I'm ready to listen. What do you think?" I'm no joke. I just said, "Okay, today's the day. I'm open to everything you have to say, and I'm going to take it seriously, and I'm going to implement it for as long as you say to, and then we'll come back to it." And he goes, "Get out of my way." And he came over and he like pushed me aside and he just like took my Maya and he just rearranged it to all fit on one monitor. He's like, "Why you got 3 monitors? You don't need all this stuff. Your eyes are going all over the place. Just look right here. You don't need all that graph editor over here." And he just reorganized my entire workspace. And I was like, "Okay." And then he said, "Okay, hotkeys. This is going to change your life." And I'm like, "Okay." And he did my hotkeys. And that was the biggest game changer.
Gotcha.
That day, I was like, "Dude, I'm shocked at the hotkeys." And what it was he put everything I needed to do my job on my left hand right there.
Mm-hmm.
No more moving over to the other side of the keyboard,
right
back. And so in one day, I stopped looking down, up, down, up, down, up. And I just looked at my Maya all day and I just worked my left hand over there. It was incredible because I immediately felt the like less eye fatigue, mental brain fog. And I just was like, just on my monitor and there was no downtime. And that was major.
That's cool.
And then what really got me excited about animation again, like fell in love with animation, was he was watching me block a shot that day. And he's like, "You're not really thinking about truly what the mechanics are doing on the breakdowns." And I go, "Well, I am, but I'm trying to just like move through it." And he goes, No. It's like, think about when the character is in the air and they're doing space magic, and they're kind of pushing off, but there's nothing there. Like, what are you really pushing off of? And how are we describing that movement? And how are you showing directionality? And when you go from this pose to that pose and you put a breakdown in there, like, what are you saying in terms of mechanically what's happening anatomically? Like, what is the pelvis doing? And I go, "Okay, well, let me try that." And so I took 2 poses on the shot I was doing and I just deleted everything between the 2 poses and I re-blocked it. And I did a play blast and I went, and my face just lit up because I saw step key animation looking fluid and connected with overlap and follow through and drag built into a single breakdown. And I just like lost my mind. I was like, "This is amazing." And I've never looked back since.
Very cool.
So it's like 22 years into my career now. And I'm just as excited today
That's awesome.
as I ever have been, so.
Well, that's one of the cool parts about getting you in on this podcast. So again, for those that don't know, and we'll make a link in this, in the post here, that we had, like I mentioned, you're one of our feature, animation instructors. You've been with us since the get-go. We did a podcast with you before, you and Jason. It was right after the first Croods release.
Yeah.
And so you were still over at DreamWorks at the time. And so since then, you're now over at Bungie. And you've been there for how long?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just one of the reasons what it was, like I said, it was just a neat opportunity to get you back in here is because you're still teaching in our feature.
Yep.
You have that background, but now you also have a games background, which we also have workshops for. So it's just, we felt like it'd be kind of a cool opportunity to talk with you, catch back up. Sure. And just even as I'm hearing some of this stuff, to see what you're taking from working in games and teaching in our body mechanics feature class.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's just, so let's, okay. Cause I'd love to get more back into that. So let's kind of back up here. You were working at DreamWorks at the time. You'd released Croods. Was that the last one you had worked on at DreamWorks at the time, or did you go into something else?
Nope. Croods was it.
Okay. So then that's when you went into, over to Bungie.
No, not exactly. So
not that
smooth. So we had the Croods come out, or we were finishing Croods. I was done. I was talking to my manager about, "Hey, what am I going to do next?" And she said, "Oh, pick a movie. And I go, no. Just put me on anything because I've been so fortunate here. I said, I'll work on anything you want me to. Just put me anywhere. And she said, no, it's very mature. I said, yeah, absolutely. Because I'd been very lucky. Kung Fu Panda 2, Croods, Megamind. I mean, I got to work on some cool stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just told her, whatever you want. A week later, I got laid off. they had a huge layoff, like 500 people, I think 550.
Yeah, that was right. Kind of a dip there for DreamWorks.
And I was the third one to go because my contract was over. And it was a good time to get rid of me. So they gave me my walking papers, but they were so amazing. And my manager was so awesome. They picked me up by my bootstraps. James Baxter just gave me a big fat hug and said, I'm so sorry. What can I do to help? And he wrote me this beautiful letter of recommendation, put his phone number on it and his name and everything. Really nice guy. But I had a job the next day, so I went literally from DreamWorks letting me go to working with real effects on Freebirds.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah.
So
now, did you do that out of their Santa Monica office?
Well, I went there for a month and trained, and then I went home. So they said, come into the studio for a month and just get trained up and then go home, work on your own PC with your own software and work contract. And so
Gotcha.
And that lasted for, 10 months roughly.
Okay.
And then what was really funny, again, the day I finished my last shot, I got a text from Jeff Gabor at Blue Sky saying, hey buddy, are you free? We need some help on Rio 2. And I said, I'll be out there Monday. And they put me on a plane. Not quite Monday, but it was I think it was 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks. Because I had to get rid of my apartment. I had to get rid of all my stuff. I had to put stuff in storage. It was a pretty major idea.
Yeah.
Because it was going to be 10 months in New York in a hotel, basically.
Now you'd worked at Blue Sky before, correct?
Twice before.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. I did basically 3 tours of duty over there. So that's the way I categorize it. But, so I went there for Rio 2 and lived in a really nice apartment type hotel set up with 30 other temp animators.
Okay.
Which is weird because I'd worked with temps before at Blue Sky, but I was never a temp. And so to go there from that perspective was really weird.
Okay.
But it was really fun.
Okay.
Had so much fun, met so many people. And when you're in basically a hotel condominium with other animators, everyone's just hanging out.
Almost kind of like a dorm room, it sounds like.
It was absolutely like a dorm room, yeah. And so you would just walk across the hall into someone else. You just open the door and walk in and go watch TV, eat food. It was like a family.
Okay.
So we did that. And then here's what's cool though. And this is one thing I would want to pass on to students. Absolutely. Is that the way opportunities come is oftentimes not the way you expect.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's because of relationships. So while I was doing the temp gig at Blue Sky, there was another guy, Sean Mullen, who was there, and he was doing storyboard work for another top secret movie that was it was in pre-production. I got to know him and I would hang out with him sometimes. I'd go see him in his storyboard, office and chat for a bit. Then we would take the bus back to White Plains where the hotel was, and we would jump off a stop early and go get pizza and a beer and watch hockey. Long story short, he left before I did. I want to say 4 months before I left, So I finished up my time at Blue Sky, went back to LA, and I was literally sitting there going, okay, what do I do next? And I was looking around and who was hiring, and my phone rang, and it was Sean. And I was like, hey man, what's going on? He goes, what are you doing? And I said, nothing, eating cornflakes, just watching TV. And he goes, well, pack up and get your butt to Salt Lake. And I was like, Salt Lake, what's in Salt Lake? He goes, well, I'm out here with Disney Interactive.
Okay.
The Disney Infinity game. And I need a guy to come out here and do high level feature film kind of marketing animation, a bunch of interstitials, commercials, things like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, let me Google what's in Salt Lake first. So I went to Google and I typed in, what is there to do in Salt Lake? And it turns out there was a lot to do. So I said, give me a call, and so let's talk to the team. And so I talked to the team and they were amazing. We got along instantly. And I just said, give me the job, I'll take it. I just want to come work with you guys. And the department head said, well, hang on a second. Let me fly you out here so you see what you're getting into. And I go, no, I'm good. He goes, no. Let me fly you out. So they flew me out and met with the team. And I was like, yeah, this place is awesome. So I went out there, worked on Disney Infinity for almost 3 years.
Okay, man, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had, was that with, shoot, what's his name? Darn it. He was one of our instructors. I did a podcast too with him. Terraria.
Oh, you're thinking, is it Peter?
No,
not Peter.
I forgot his name. Darn it.
Okay.
Yeah, he was out there. He worked on it. I don't know if he was doing the marketing stuff like that. It was more of the in-game stuff. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Who it was, but I want to know now.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. It'd be hard to find right now.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, yes, I went out there and did that. And that was, it was interesting. It was a lot of fun, but it was because of that relationship. It was because getting to know Sean, when he needed somebody, he just thought of me, because we spent a lot of time together,
Gotcha.
So I would never discount networking with people, genuine though, not like, hounding people, but like genuine relationships, building lasting relationships with people in the industry that you can help each other out,
Right.
And in fact, I did the same thing. So later on when we were hiring, I called my buddy, Andrew Atterbury, who was,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Andrew. Yeah.
He was one of the ones I think came in right after us.
Yeah. So
he's the second or third class. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's at Pixar now. So,
yeah.
So I called him and I said, hey man, are you available? And I knew he was because we all were doing the temp thing for a little bit there. So I hired him immediately and brought him out. And because I brought him, I'm not tooting my horn, by the way, he did the work, but because I brought him out to Salt Lake and we worked on a lot of Pixar projects, he got to know the Pixar people and worked on Pixar type shots. And that was enough to get him into Pixar after we got shut down at Salt Lake.
Gotcha.
So then flash forward to the end of Disney Interactive. So when Disney decided it was enough, they were going to shut us down. Again, I was like, okay, now what? What do I do now? And so I started, I put a demo reel together, put it on the internet like you always do. And started doing animation tests for companies, but I had no real, there was nothing that I was really passionate about. I was just trying to figure out well, what do I do next? And what was really funny was there was this guy, Richard Lico, right? Richard Lico. We were all fans of his work. We loved Richard's work, and he would put out these demo reels and we would watch them and talk about the shots and analyze the animation, Bungie guy at the time. Well, we were at work still because the nice thing was Disney said, hey, we're shutting you down, but we'll let you have the studio for 60 days, make demo reels, do animation tests, do what you got to do.
That's great.
Use the computers, whatever. So we were still going to work, Anyway, so we're at work one day and my buddy Nick Beckstead goes, hey everyone, Richard's new reel's up, come check it out. So we all ran over to Nick's desk and we're watching Rick Lico's new demo reel up on Vimeo. And I swear I'm watching his work and my phone vibrated, and I pulled my phone out and I looked at it and it said message from Richard Lico. And I was like, what?
Someone set me up here.
So I just put the phone away and I just kind of smiled what's he going to say? And I loved that anticipation for a moment of why is he messaging me? So I went back to my desk and I turned away from everyone, pulled my phone out, and read it. And he just said, hey, sorry to hear about Disney. Do you have time for a phone call tonight? And so I wrote back, yeah, give me a call. Here's my number, and I raced home and he called. And we chatted and he goes, well, listen, here's the thing. I'm leaving Bungie because I want to go do a startup. I've had a good run here, but I want to do something different. I want to do some VR stuff. I need someone to replace me. And he's like, and I think you're the guy. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, there's something. I saw your demo reel. There was something about the style that I saw myself in. And I was like, that's the guy. And so he's like, I want you to apply. I was like, oh, okay, great. Talked to my family a little bit, and they all said, yeah, do it. So I applied, and I talked to the studio department head the next day, Bill O'Brien, and he was incredibly awesome. We just got along. We were laughing already within 10 minutes. We were just like cracking jokes and stuff, and we just hit it off. And I thought, cool, I got it in the bag. And then they said, here's a test. I was like, oh, the test. And so
no, just tell me where I need to sign. I mean, right?
Yeah, no, right. Can't we just skip that? But no, they had me do a test, and I passed the test, but I think the reason why I passed the test was because I did a complete deep dive into Bungie culture, Bungie games, stylistically speaking, content wise, GDC talks, everything I could find. I just like absorbed.
Gotcha.
Played the game from that moment on, like just played every free moment. I was just playing, and I just picked up on key things that they were doing. Did the test, passed. Then they said, okay, now come out to Seattle for an interview. Can't I just get the job, So they flew me out. They took me out for 3 days. They said, come out for 3 days. Just, look at your car. You can look around. You can check out the area and stuff. Cool. Problem. So we went out there came out here for 3 days, and I interviewed, and somehow got an offer. Got an offer, and here's another thing too I want to talk about real quick. So there was this one guy, Mike, who came in during the interview process, and he had a laptop with him. And he just turned the laptop around and said, okay, that is your walk cycle. And I said, oh, yes, the walk cycle, because I knew it wasn't perfect, And he just said, what would you do differently to this walk cycle now that you didn't do then? And I just looked at it and I just missed it. I just said, well, I think I would just polish it more because it's a little stiff. And he goes, okay, is that your answer? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, if you look at the upper body, it's rotated back and you're holding a bow staff like a weapon, like you're ready to go, like you're ready for action. I said, yeah. And he said, well, look at the bottom half from the pelvis down. It's straight on. You're not walking across yourself. And I went, oh, and I just like slapped my forehead and I said, oh. And I
want a do-over.
I just simply said, I'll never unsee that again. You got me. And then he told me 6 months later, the reason why he said thumbs up to Mike Walling was because I took it and I owned it.
Very cool.
No excuses. I didn't try to backpedal. I didn't try to make up a reason.
Well, actually, what I really meant was, none of that. Huh?
Yeah. He just said, you just took it and you just said, I'll never unsee that again. And I liked that. I liked
very cool
responsibility. And I said, yeah, he's good. Hire him. So
very cool.
Thank God,
Okay. So that's actually kind of a cool thing here because I have two questions here.
Cool.
But the first one was you coming from, DreamWorks at the highest level of animation feature. You'd worked at these other great studios here. They can obviously tell that you knew animation, right? So, and what was the purpose then of the tests?
Yeah. I mean, the test is tricky because the test is more than just animation, especially in games. They're not necessarily just looking to see if you can animate or not.
Okay.
That's obviously part of it, right? But they want to see how you think. They want to know what your thinking is in terms of, hey, does this person know gameplay? Right? Gameplay is way different.
Yeah.
Gameplay is different in how you communicate content, how you use cameras, how you develop clips that might work from a controller standpoint, because when I'm using this thing right here, right, and I'm playing animations, they all have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so they want to kind of get an idea of how much you might or might not know about gameplay philosophy. Like what is my approach to making content? It's very different, So I think it's more about that kind of thing. They want to get an idea of, do you know the content? Like, have you paid attention to what they make, first of all? Because
okay.
I had two really good friends who we all tested together at Bungie, and they did not make it. And I knew why before they even submitted. I knew they weren't going to pass because They were doing off the wall, crazy stuff that felt more like Riot games than Bungie games.
Gotcha.
And they didn't take the time to look at what Bungie did.
So that's a great lesson there. Yeah. For anybody who's applying for, somewhere.
Sure. And so they give you this test, and there's a PDF with like instructions, and the instructions seem simple enough, but there's always stuff buried in there. Like, is he gonna question this? He should, if he knows gameplay, right? He should question the camera choice, or he should actually ask the question, wait a second, is this first person or third person?
Gotcha.
That's important, And so a lot of times they want to see how you're going to make content for games there, and then the animation is like, animation's important.
Right.
It's important.
You wouldn't have got the interview had you not, but they're trying to see now, how do you fit into this culture? And
Now I will say this, I did get lucky because they told me on day one, they said, okay, welcome to day one. There are no expectations. You don't know anything. We really thought you would be a benefit here because of your 14 years of feature film experience. We want something new here. We want something fresh.
That's awesome.
So they said, we're not looking for a replacement for, Richard Lico. So don't feel like you have to fill those shoes. So they said, there was enough gameplay there that you got by, but now we're going to really teach you gameplay. So I got lucky from that. The timing was amazing.
Okay.
Amazing timing,
So my second question then is, you did, when you were over at, was it Avalanche Studios? Then, okay.
Yeah.
When you were there, did you do any in-game stuff, or was it strictly?
I did.
Okay. So that was my next question then, was how familiar were you with going to video games? So you had some understanding of it before you went over to Bungie.
God, barely.
Okay. That was my next question was that, did you anticipate then going into games from Avalanche when you got that call? Was that like, hey,
I wanted to. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to go to games.
What made you want to?
Okay. So this goes back a little bit. So in 2008 ish, I saw a demo reel go up on YouTube from a buddy of mine, Tom Seville, and it was for Halo Reach.
Okay.
And I saw this reel go up from him, and I was like blown away. I was like, wow, they can do this much polish now in a video game. I'm blown away. And the idea of doing bite-sized clips that connected was very attractive to me.
Okay.
Because I had done, again, 10 years at that point of feature film work, and the idea of doing something that was controllable and that level of polish, it felt like feature film polish movement. Like
Gotcha.
It was very intensive, accurate body mechanics, but still space magic-y, still stylized, still fun, and I was really intrigued by that. So I started at that moment, 2008, 2009 is when I started kind of mentally veering off to like, I wonder what that's all about. I want to maybe try that. But I kept getting pulled back into feature films. In fact, my time at DreamWorks was not what I wanted. I actually was recruited heavily into DreamWorks, but I kept turning them down for over 2 weeks. I kept saying no, and Kim Mackey, bless her. I love that woman. She called me.
I've met her. Very nice gal.
She called me every other day for 2 weeks. Like, just give me your demo reel. I was like, nope, I'm done with features. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I need a break, And she's like, no, come on. And I finally did. And I finally gave her a reel. And I thanked her for that for 3 years by buying her coffee every week. So amazing woman.
Very cool. Yeah. Met her once. Very nice gal.
Yeah. So, I wanted to at that point kind of venture into games at that point, but I kept getting pulled back. But when I did get to Avalanche, my role was not to do video game work. It was to do marketing materials,
right,
vignettes, things like that. They wanted like high level animation as much as we could with the tools allowed and the rigs, things like that. So one day I go to Gavin, who was our our department head, and I said, hey, is there ever a chance that I could maybe do a shot for the game? And he goes, how much you want? He goes, you can do as much as you want. You want a shot right now? Go talk to so-and-so, this guy, Jamie. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, man, just I don't care. You can do all the game.
What was Jamie's last name?
That's
That's who
he's at Riot. I forgot his name.
I think that's who I'm thinking of. He was one of our games instructor for a little bit. Jamie,
Okay,
and I want to see
Jamie.
I forget
Yeah,
what. Yeah, that's who it was. Yep.
That's him. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, I went to talk to Jamie and I said, hey, Gavin said I could do a game shot, and he said to talk to you. He goes, all right, what do you want? Do you want like Baymax or Spy? I go, give me Baymax. I was like, yes, Baymax right away. And so he goes, all right, go do here's a shot. Go do a roundhouse kick, and here's some reference, and I'll email it to you. So he emails me reference from the actual movie Big Hero 6, and it wasn't out yet. The movie was not even out.
Okay.
So he gave me a reference from the movie with watermarks on it, and it was Baymax when Baymax was training to do martial arts, and he's in the green suit. And I watched this shot, and I was like, okay, I can do that. And so I started planning my timing, and I was sitting there going through the reference, counting frames on, okay, how long to the wind up? Where's the weight shift? Okay, cool. And I was looking at the key poses, and I suddenly realized, wait a second, I'm on frame 74 on the weight shift. And I think I heard something about the hit on frame 13. What? So I ran back down to Jamie's and I was like, did you say frame 13? Like, yeah, welcome to games. And I was like, okay. And he goes, here, just open up the Hulk smash and you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. And so I ran back to my desk and I opened up one of the existing Hulk shots of Hulk like doing some kind of punch or smash. I can't remember what, and I watched it one time and I just got it. And I was like, oh, I get it. And it was, I fell in love.
Very cool.
The process, because I was like, what an amazing challenge to put weight into a character and have them be responsive, because there's a player out there who wants to play the animation as quick as possible because they want to beat the bad guy, or they want to jump up here, or they want to get away or something. And now you have timing, gameplay timing. It's a real thing, right? And so I studied that animation for a couple hours. I just went through and just like looked at, and what I realized was, okay, you spend a lot of time in the wind up, and then you get to the hit fast. And then if there's time afterwards, then you can do your flourish or your return back to idle. But oftentimes there's an interruptible component where you can just go into a run, or you can jump out of it, or you can crouch, or you can do another combo or some other thing, and that was it. So I did, I think, 3 different shots for Baymax, and those 3 shots are what Rick Lico pointed out.
How funny.
3 years later, almost.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, Richard, what's that?
It's a miracle, I think. Yeah.
Now, Richard taught in our games workshops for a little bit here. Is that how you came across him, or how did you come across him for him to give you a holler?
I knew him by that point.
Okay.
I think I knew him a little bit at that point, but no, I mean, I didn't know the guy at all. Otherwise, before that, we just liked his work,
Okay.
And I didn't even know of him really until my buddy Nick was like, look at this guy's work, it's really detailed, really imaginative, and we just started watching his work, and so when he messaged me after Disney shut us down, it was the first time I'd ever talked to him.
Gotcha. Okay. How funny.
Yeah, it was interesting, And then after my interview at Bungie, he took me to dinner. We went to get ramen, got some ramen in Seattle.
You should have been taking him out to dinner. He gave you the call there.
he insisted, So
yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you said you were at Bungie, and it was blank slate. They were going to get you up to speed with in-game animation here.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest hurdles that you encountered?
How much time you get?
That's what we got you here for, man.
Yeah. So my manager, Matt Kelly, I lucked out in a way, because Matt Kelly was a pain in the butt. Matt Kelly was my manager. He was also my lead on the what we call the sandbox team, which is gameplay side, the player.
Okay.
He his knowledge into gameplay and into Bungie was miles deep. He's infinitely knowledgeable about Destiny and about Bungie. So he told me on day one also, like he took me out to a one-on-one. We just went for a walk. And he just said, hey, listen, your ramp up is going to be like a year. So get ready to buckle in and get going, because it's going to be a long time. You're not going to be comfortable for a while. And he was not joking. I went home for weeks with bad headaches because the stress of what they were putting me under was more than I could handle initially, but I handled it because I was hungry and I was ready to go. But it was so difficult because up to that point, all I cared about was cameras, characters, animating a good performance, polish, animation. And now suddenly I was trying to think about when to apply, math to things like expressions. Okay, we're going to put an expression on here to ramp this animation up, and then we're going to ramp it off, and we're going to give it a ratio. And I'm like, what? And we're in these interfaces, and we're in state machines, and we're dragging things around. And I'd be like overwhelmed. And then he'd make me do it. And then he'd say, okay, now break it and do it again. And I would be like, but we just did it, break it. Okay. And I'd have to break it and then do it over again. And it got to the point where if I ran into a problem, I had to make a decision. Okay, I sit here with this problem for 20, 30 minutes trying to figure it out, or I go tell Matt, hey, I got a problem, and he'll be here for 3 hours, 4 hours. And I would start to get like sweaty. And he had a rule. Like, if you're there with a problem for more than 20 minutes, get me. Don't sit there any time longer than that. And so that was like a year of that, and it's been 5 years. I'm 5 years there.
That's awesome.
And I still feel like I don't know anything. because here's the thing, and this is true. There's not a right or wrong way to do everything in the game. There's only the most efficient way. So the problem with that is that you can be faced with a problem on a shot that you're looking at. Like, for example, hey, I'm doing this thing that it requires, because you're doing things with trajectory and velocity and physics. Sometimes you don't do all the animation in one Maya file. Sometimes you have a Maya file with just a pose in it. And then you have another Maya file with like turbulence on it, right? Then you've got one Maya file with just the character going from one pose to the next pose, because you're going to drive that on through an expression through velocity.
Wow.
And you've got another Maya file that's like basically, the enter, and then there's one for the exit, and then there's one for pitch and yaw, right? You've got all these Maya files. Like, for example, when I did the Meteor Strike Super on Destiny 2, that was 7 Maya files to make that simple fly through the air and crash happen. So the problem is you're play testing this thing, and then this pose isn't kicking on, and you're like, why isn't the pose kicking on? And there's no manual for it. There's no like, well, you didn't do this right. It's like,
you gotta go figure it out, huh?
Let's figure it out. And so my manager and I sat there for 2 days, all day, just rearranging stuff. We'll try it this way, just to get this pose to turn on. And then it turned out there was this like interface file somewhere with a bunch of entries in it. And the entry for that pose was down at the bottom, and we had to move it up. Just moved it up, and the pose turned on.
And it worked.
And we just didn't know that. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that keeps me up at night is like, I'm very competent in my ability to animate movement, very comfortable, but sometimes when I'm trying to get things to work with velocity and I have to ramp something up, and I have to find a way to create layered content, and I mean layered in terms of multiple Maya files, not just layered inside of Maya, but create content that's going to overlap itself and create drag moments because you're on a controller pushing the character around and they're flying. Whoa, man, It's hard. It's really difficult. And I
Now,
struggle with that.
did you have a technical background? No.
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no. I would strongly put my feet in the stance of more creative.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So these are things that you've just had to learn and
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
What was it that kept you persevering?
Oh man, just I love the process.
Okay.
Well,
That's, I guess I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just that aha, and you're like,
I love it.
boom, we solved it. Got it.
Yeah. I love it. I love it too much. And I love the collaboration. One of my favorite aspects of working on games is the tight bond I have with my effects animator and my designer.
Okay.
We work almost in tandem. And we fire each other up. Like they get excited when they see stuff, and I'll throw something together. Like I'll throw a piece of content together just to give them something functional. Like we'll call it functional pass. Like here, just put this in and you can play it. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm like, this is garbage, but awesome. And then I get excited. I go, because internally I go, okay, I'm going to make them something that's going to blow their heads off. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'll go passionately go do that. I'll go try to make something that's amazing. And then my effects guy, he's just the same way. His name's Dave, and he's a phenomenal effects animator or effects artist, I guess he'd call himself. And my designer is making this thing that we're going to play, and then I slap on character movement, and then Dave slaps on effects work, and it just all is there, and you're playing it, and in real time you can go, oh, that's kind of slow, all right, and you go back to Maya real quick, make your adjustments, kick it out, import it, play it. I love that process.
That's cool.
I love it so much. Yeah,
that is very cool. But
I think I wonder sometimes though if I would love it as much if I couldn't polish the work though, because there's a standard between all of us that we live by, and when we don't hit the standard for ourselves, we get pretty upset, and we beat ourselves up, and then that person's like, go, no, it's amazing. Oh, yeah, but you're looking at it from the front of the house, but the back of it's just a bunch of cards. If you breathe on it too hard, it's going to fall. It's just Band-Aids, bubble gum, and cards. That's how you feel about it, right? So
now, are you able to do the level of polish because of the studio that you're at, i.e., being a AAA studio? Or is it some of the stuff we talked about as well that, you've been able to consolidate some of your timing because of the hotkeys, things like that? So now I've got some more of that time and I'm able to kind of put more of that into it. Explain that a little bit.
Well, that's interesting because we do debate that. Actually, we debate how much polish is actually needed. The genre of the game allows for a fantasy-driven physics world that's almost based in reality. So it's not it's not mocap. We hanky everything on Destiny. It's not cartoony, so it's more based in reality physics. But we can do what we call space magic. So I can have a character jump up and then jump up again, right? So I can have a character jump up and wind up, for example, for a punch. And then as they punch, I have them go up a little bit more, and we just hold that hang time, and then they fall to the ground, right, into their landing pose, whatever. So we can take certain artistic liberties because of the space magic element of our game, but the physics world they live in is pretty accurate. It's believable, but it's still keyframed. If you compare the keyframed animation and you put it next to the mocap from our cinematics, it's a huge difference, right? Because mocap is much more ambient. It's much more natural. There's a lot of secondary movement in mocap that you don't keyframe in ever. You just don't, So it's really interesting. But here's the debate though. The debate comes down to, some people would argue you don't need that much polish because in the game you can't see it. And it's hard to argue that. But when I'm in my group with my lead and my first person animator and every other animator who works at Bungie, we all know that we're all looking at each other's work. And I have a standard, and I have a standard, man. And so I polish well beyond what I'm supposed to, you know. In fact, I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to say it because it might help somebody out there. But sometimes I will work on a shot for the game and we'll block it in Spline and then play it, and it's perfect and we don't touch it. But then I save out of my file into a folder called demo reel. And then later on, I will go to that shot and I will polish it to the nth degree.
Gotcha.
And that's what goes on my reel.
Okay.
I need to demonstrate that I understand the physics at hand and what's going on secondary, gameplay timing also included, you know. So, you know, because there was some stuff I did for D2 that was just blocked in, that was like, don't touch it. It's perfect. The timing's perfect. The movement's perfect. The effects works on it. And I was like, yeah, I can't argue. It's beautiful, you know. But then I had to go back later and really flesh it out.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, I think a couple things that kind of come to mind when you say that. One is that it keeps your skill set at a high level. You know what I'm saying? When you're not willing to let it kind of drop between, you know, it's that still striving for mastery, you know, sure. Even if it's on your own, you're going, I'm keeping my skill set sharp. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other part too, though, is that oftentimes it's like, in animation, you don't want it to see it. Sometimes you want to feel it.
Yep.
So I think if you were to take out some of that polish, you can easily say, well, look, you can't see it. You're like, yeah, but if I take that out, you're not going to feel that though. And there's a difference there. So I can see where that fine line is of wanting to make sure that enough polish is in there. Even if you don't quite see it, the player's feeling it.
Sure. Absolutely. And also to add on to that, you have to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're just constantly being told it's good enough, are you going to be satisfied?
Right.
On your job for long term, I wonder.
Right.
And so I need the freedom to polish to some degree, you know.
Gotcha.
And they know that, and so they let us, you know. But yeah, because we do a lot of, you know, art reviews too, where I'm just like, here's a play blast, and I put that in there because I just want to show off. You know,
this is why you pay me. This is why I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, come on, it's fun. You know, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And you know, what's funny is, going back, there was a thing we started doing this thing called finishers.
Okay.
About my lights, we have storms coming through, so if my power goes out, whoops.
Okay, we're doing all right.
Yeah. So we were doing this thing called finishers a couple of years back, almost 3 years now, I think. And so I was going to do the first one, and it was going to be the Superman punch. You know, Superman punch, right? All right, jump around the air and come down on the enemy, right? And so I did my research, got on YouTube, found all these WWE videos of guys doing Superman punches and stuff. And then I was like, okay. So I went downstairs to the mocap room and I set up my cameras and I just filmed myself doing it, just jumping in the air and kind of coming down and punching. And I got one take. I was like, that's the one. I'm happy with that. Ran upstairs and blocked it in. And then I was like, looked around. No one's here today. Okay, well, I can't show them my blocking. Well, I'm just going to break it down then. So I broke the animation down. Next thing you know, I polished it. It's like done. I like so done that I'm like, man, that looks good. And I was so excited. I'm going to show the guys in the morning what I did. And they're going to be like, that's amazing. So next morning rolls around. The team's back from their sick day, you know. And I go, hey, can you guys come over here? I just did a pass at the Superman punch. I want to get your feedback on it. And so my Matt Kelly, again, my lead, comes over and he's like right next to me, shoulder to shoulder. And I just proudly play the animation. And everyone's watching it. And then Matt just looks at me and goes, well, it's beautiful, but it's not Destiny. And it's not space magic. And I went, you're right. And I saw it immediately. It was a good lesson in be careful, because you can get lost in the work and you can forget the peripherals. You can forget what character class you're doing it for. You can forget what game you're even working on. You can forget all these things. And you can just make a pretty animation. And so I was so proud of that animation that I actually put it aside. I kept it because I loved it so much. Yeah, but I went back to the drawing board and did the Space Magic version. And that's when I was talking about where you jump in the air, you wind up, and then we punch and we come back up in the air a little bit more, and then we like land, right?
Gotcha.
Sorry about my son.
Oh, no, you're good. We appreciate the time that you got in here.
No worries. Yeah. So.
Okay. So go ahead.
I want to talk about one more thing.
Yeah. I've got some more questions.
So here he comes. I'm going to tell daddy. And so one thing I want to talk about, just I think will help students in general, is when I talk about efficiencies too, there's this one thing I learned to do about 2 years ago that kind of changed my life as well. And I think it's something that is valuable to kind of pass on. So I think when students see feature film work or video game work, they probably assume a lot of times that one animator did that entire thing perfectly and then submitted it and it was done in the movie or in the game or whatever. But what they don't realize is that everyone touches that shot. Directors give feedback, animators give feedback. There's feedback coming from all angles, and shots evolve, and then they get done. One thing that I learned a couple of years ago is I figured out that I could get an idea for my shot and run downstairs, shoot reference really quick, like shoot reference for like maybe a half an hour to an hour and get a couple takes I like. Then I'll email those takes to my Gmail, run back upstairs, unpack my Gmail, right? Get my reference into Maya, whatever. And I would block out that shot based on that reference. And I'd give myself a deadline. I'd say, okay, I want this blocked out in 2 hours. Before lunch, I want this blocked out. So I'll block out that shot as quick as possible. And I'm talking like, the shots are usually like 100 frames or less. It's not too bad. So I'll block the idea in, and then I'll have the team come over real quick and just give feedback on it. And the whole idea is I want them to destroy the shot and give me all their best feedback. Give me your best ideas based on what I did. Mm-hmm. And it works like a charm. So they'll come over and they'll just bombard the shot with like, no, how about this? Or why are you doing this part? Why don't you do this thing? And then I'll just take all that feedback and I'll run back downstairs and I'll shoot reference again. And with all that stuff in mind, and then run back upstairs and try to get the block in within 2 hours again with the new ideas in there, and then show it again. And that throwaway version is probably the best thing I ever figured out for myself.
Gotcha.
In 21 years of animating professionally, was get that idea. And I've, it's not like it's a new concept.
Right.
And told that my whole career, but it was the first time I actually took action on it and
kind of clicked for you to run with it.
Yeah. So I would say to students, like, do that. Go get that block out as quick as possible, as dirty as possible, and just get the feedback from wherever, from whoever. And then just assess what's direction, what's feedback. Sift through it, find the gems, and then go implement it.
Gotcha.
Don't be afraid to throw things away. Throw it away. The best idea is usually not the first idea.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, what I love about that too, from my own experience, I was working on a shot or a project, and we all want to get a home run off the bat, and it was one of those things. As soon as I realized going into the review, what feedback do you have for me? Not how much do you like it? Just what feedback do you have for me? Yeah. It changes your whole mindset, because then you're able to kind of really hone in on it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's never our idea anyway, right? We're right. Hired to basically help create part of an escapism, a fantasy or something for the viewer. And it's the studio's project, or it's the director's project. And we're hired to help him kind of realize that vision. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be open to all feedback.
Yeah.
Take it all. Because here's the thing that I tell my students now is like, if you throw your idea away and you take all this feedback from all these people, in the long run, you are just building yourself a solid demo reel. You know what I mean? And so if you do want to move somewhere else, or you want to try a different studio or try different kinds of animation projects, all those people helped you make a solid reel with solid work on it,
Right.
So welcome it.
Yeah.
Take everything in and benefit. Everyone benefits from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you become a team player, you validate their ideas and their feedback. Your shots get elevated, your work gets elevated, the project benefits.
Right.
And then it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So kind of going a little bit back to original here.
Yep.
You mentioned they hired you because of your feature film background, right? Or because what they wanted to kind of, you're replacing Richard Lico. They want your feature background here.
Yep.
So you said you've been at Bungie for how long? 5 years?
5 years now. Yeah.
5 years now. What are some of the things as you kind of reflect on that 5 years that you've been able to bring into Bungie and in-game animation from your feature film background? That those are the things that they were kind of looking for with you.
Yeah. I struggle with that. And I tell my boss, I go, man, what do I have to offer you? What do I have to offer you? Because this is gameplay. And, if I look around, everyone's doing pretty good, man, without me. Right? Like we all have that kind of like imposter syndrome, I think, where we're just like, what do I bring to the table?
Right. Right.
What my lead and my manager, what he wanted me to do initially, and I did, was he wanted me to come up with talks, do some talks, get the team together in the screening room or the theater, and give a talk on some stuff. So the first thing I did was I animated a shot from scratch. I took an entire acting shot, and I got reference from a movie or audio, and I shot reference ad nauseum for like 2 nights. I animated this whole shot. I saved out every version of, here's like the first block out, here's blocking breakdown, here's rough spline, here's like through polish kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I gave a talk on that, and I just kind of talked about process. First of all, like, here's my process. And some of the guys were like, yeah, well, our process is better because the way we work. And that's where I started to kind of get that kind of like open my mind up to other things, So I did that. And then I gave a talk at one point about what does it mean to say I want to be a better animator. That was a pretty heavy moment for me because that epiphany led me to telling my coworker Drew, like, all right, I'm ready to listen. Like, what do you have?
Gotcha.
And what it was I was helping another kid out in cinematics, because I do cinematics work for them as well. Because my feature film experience, they love having me over there because I can slip right in there and I can just bust out sequences. It's fun. It's fun. Whenever I get the chance, I go over there and help out. So I was helping this more junior guy out, and he just made this comment about, I just want to be a better animator. And my first thought was, well, how can we keep throwing away our changes to your workflow? You keep going back to what's comfortable, which isn't working. And I was like, what does that really mean? And I really was like, what does that mean? What does it take as a student? And I don't mean like a beginner, but I mean anybody who's a student of something.
Right.
What does it truly mean to say, I want to be better at it? Like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to throw away and rebuild again from the ground up?
Gotcha.
So I did a whole talk on that.
That's cool.
Because it led me down to the point where I was like, well, what is my excuse? Why am I pushing these people off? They're trying to help me. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to be willing to throw everything I know away in this moment right now, realizing what I just asked myself. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do this experiment and see what happens. And it changed my life.
Very cool.
So I gave a talk on that as well. And I was kind of like, I'm looking at you, kid, and you and you. So yeah.
Very cool.
But
so
other than that, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, you can't help not glean and utilize someone who's animated at the highest level you have for that many years and benefit from it. So I know that bleeds into the culture, that bleeds into your animation that other people are gleaning off of and learning from. So I knew that. I just was kind of curious as you reflect on that, what were some of your thoughts? So,
right.
And then again, the fact that you're you're able to seamlessly jump into cinematics, bust out some stuff, and make this game look, in the cinematics department, feature film level as well, or closest, that you can with the time you've been allotted. So
sure.
It's just neat. Like I said, you're unique because you've had such a vast experience in feature film. You're animating at the highest level in game stuff too, and it's just kind of neat to see that cross pollination, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, it's we're all obviously very competitive people. I think ultimately with ourselves, not with everybody else.
Right.
We're competitive within ourselves of wanting to go do amazing work with whatever we do, right? And so for me, when I leave my home team to go help out someone else, I bring quite an ego with me. And it's not like an arrogant ego, it's more of an ego of like,
this is Mike Walling's standard. This is
I'm a guest in their house. I better destroy this. I better kill whatever they give me, And so I walk in there with a real sense of confidence in a way, of like, okay, give me whatever you have. I'm here to help the team out. I'm here to help the elevate the work. What do you got? And I just go in open-minded and enthusiastic and ready to go, and I kind of put an ego to that in a way, because I become competitive, like insanely competitive, especially if I leave my team, like when I go to cinematics, I go there to just destroy.
Do you walk in with a swagger at all with sunglasses?
I just walk in, give me everything you want to get rid of, and I'll take it, And then I pride myself on leaving there, giving them my best work, and so there's something really rewarding about that,
That's cool.
But it's for the greater good though. It's like I'm there to help the company out, and the team out. I want to somehow impact the team, and we are an interesting organization. We're not a bunch of animators sitting together.
Mm-hmm.
We sit in different buildings. We sit in different areas. We're by discipline. We're in a cabal. So like I'll sit with my designer and my effects guy and my first person guy, and I'll sit with my lead. And that's kind of it. We're our own team. And then over there is like bosses, and then there's combatants over there. And then in that building is, cinematics. And then there's NPCs, vendors. It's like everyone's split up, because they have entire teams that work with them, like, dialogue, like narrative, story, encounters, raids. And so there's massive teams attached to all those disciplines. So we don't sit together.
Gotcha. Okay. What are some of the things that you maybe miss from feature?
Oh man. Yeah. I do miss feature sometimes. I think about it. I think the things I miss the most are, it's going to sound weird, but there's a few things. One, the simplicity of the thing is appealing. Like, here's your layout. This is your camera. Here's your stage. Here's your characters. You kind of only have to worry about your animation from that one angle for the most part, right? And it's a kind of a linear process, and you're just kind of a cog in that machine, and you're just kind of doing that one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you get to do it to massive polish level, right? And so you get the satisfaction of building a performance, and it's quite amazing to go from a concept to polished curves and nuance and just expression in the character through movement and through expressions on the face and through flourish and secondary, like all those little things are created through the evolution of the shot, and then they come to life.
Gotcha.
I miss that part of it,
Gotcha.
And that's why I think I like to do the cinematics work, is because I get to put some of that in there,
Okay.
But also the people are different, and I really do miss my crews that I worked on at like DreamWorks, Blue Sky. They are different people.
Okay. How so? Just out of curiosity. Because you're more of a specialist in that environment.
Well, they're more childlike. They're more childlike. I think.
Okay.
You know, we are animals. No, we're not animals, but we're a much more childlike group in a feature film setting. I feel like, you know, in video games, it's a much more mature crowd.
Okay.
I mean, like, listen, when I first started at Bungie, I was working like 3 desks down from this kid who was like, I think he was 19 years old, and he graduated MIT at 15. You know what I mean? Like, he was different. So,
do you think it's because partly because the environment's more technical? Just that's breeds that. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the personalities are vastly different than what I'm used to, right? And anybody who's ever worked at Blue Sky knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's a mentality in that group that's I can't explain it. It's not immature, and it's kind of childlike.
Okay. No, I get that. That's cool. Do you ever do things that work now at Bungie and they're looking at you like, what? And you're like, okay, sorry, I didn't.
One time I reverted back to a Blue Sky voice I used to do, and someone told me, hey, that might offend somebody. Like, oh, sorry, I was just being funny.
Okay, so now contrast the other question here.
Yeah,
you know, we've talked a lot about that with, but if you could kind of encapsulate, what is it then that you just really enjoy working in video games?
Yeah, collaboration's amazing. I thrive off of other people, and so So in contrast to feature films, having a much more proactive approach to the process, because I'm very involved with my team. So I'm creating content and trying to sell my pitches, and I'm working my content to work best with the design work. And we're fudging things, and it's like putting a puzzle together, but kind of making it along the way, you know? So I love the process of having a voice, and they rely on my voice. We go to meetings and we talk about, all right, what do you think, Mike? And I'm like, okay, well, we got a problem here because this feels like this, but we want it to feel kind of like this. And we don't do this on this kind of thing. So what are we going to do about that? You know, so we start talking about it. And then I start talking about, well, that's 34 pieces of content. Can we afford that memory wise? And so there's a lot more involvement in like the process versus just like, okay, here's your shot, go do it. You know,
you feel like you have a bit more ownership than as a result?
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. When I see those supers in the game and people are playing them and they're like, oh my gosh, look at the meteor guy. Right. And I'm like, yeah, we built that.
Gotcha.
The 3 of us built that, you know?
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And that's kind of why I asked that question. I think it's I asked those questions for a couple of reasons. One, people who are coming into animation, they may go, okay, what field of animation do I want to jump into? Right. So that's kind of one reason why I asked those. But the other part too, is sometimes people can kind of get pigeonholed, so to speak, by their own thoughts of sticking in video games or sticking in feature film. And so I go, here's someone like you who've gone from one to the other in that extreme. Right. It's just neat to see the pros and cons on that. And I think it's where people have to be open about working in different industries of animation.
Well, it's funny because when I start a new class, every workshop, the first thing I do on the first night is I ask every person, what are your goals? Like, where do you want to end up?
Right.
And I'm not looking for a definitive answer, but I want to get an idea of who's open to doing anything. Right. And people will invariably always say, oh, I want to do feature film work. And I'll be like, well, why? Why do you want to work on that? Because if you asked me that, I might not know the answer to it. That's a tough question to answer sometimes. Right? And you're just like, I don't know. I'm just motivated to do it, you know? But here's my point though. My point in asking that question is that I'll tell them, you know, here's the thing. You may have some kind of preconceived notion of what this thing is. Like, I want to go do this thing because I know it's going to be amazing. And what you don't realize is that if you got a job doing any kind of animation, you're probably going to be very satisfied doing that, at least for a while you figure out next steps, right? Because there was a moment where I was not an animator at PDI DreamWorks. I was a wannabe animator, and I was afraid to leave because I was already in the building.
Okay.
But I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. So I kept holding on hope, like maybe they'll just eventually give me a shot. Maybe they'll give me a shot eventually. And I kept animating on my own time and making demo reels, but they were not giving me a shot to animate on Shrek or Ants or whatever. And so I was in the building, but I wasn't animating professionally. But again, I was afraid to leave the prestige of that building, that company,
Right.
and all the benefits that came with just being in the building. Right. And then I finally got an ultimatum from my wife, like, you have to apply somewhere else, you know? And so I did, hesitantly. And sure enough, I got an interview. I got an interview to go work on Jimmy Neutron at DNA Productions.
Okay.
And I took the job, went down to Texas and went to the studio on my first day. I started working, and within an hour, I was like, oh my gosh, this is way better than I ever thought it would be. And I was like, PDI DreamWorks who? It was like, because I was animating. I was suddenly animating for money on a movie, and it didn't matter where it was. And so I'm always curious about that question, because I think in the end, if you're open to just wanting to create content and become an animator, you know, you might be surprised how much you love where you end up. You never know.
That's yeah. And that's why like I said, that's why I kind of ask those questions. Cause I think it's someone like you particularly give good insight and things to think for people to think about here.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think I could find the same amount of passion for going back to features too, as well.
Gotcha.
Just wanting to polish content, wanting to create moments, wanting to create performances. You know, if I can polish to the level that makes me happy, I think that's all I care about.
Right. Gotcha. Hey, quick question. You see, I forgot that you'd worked at, was it, you said DNA over in okay. So I've done 2 podcasts. One was with Kirby Atkins.
Yeah, I know Kirby.
Okay. And then Rod Douglas. Okay. He's a storyboard artist over at Real Effects.
Okay.
But he was he worked at DNA, and it might have been after. Yeah, it's after. Yeah, so he was at DNA. So I was just kind of curious if you knew the two.
Got it. I know Kirby.
Okay,
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool.
In fact, Kirby there was a moment on the TV series where the crew tried something different. They said, "Hey, we're going to try this new process where one animator is going to block out the animation and the other animator is going to spline it, because we can just rifle through content faster. So you're going to block out shots, you're going to spline them." So Kirby was my blocker for a bit.
Oh, okay.
And I would spline his shots, and we got quite good at it, where he was like, one day he's like, "Yeah, this is working pretty good. Like, they love your spline work on my blocking." And I was like, this sucks, man. I want to do my own shots, but whatever. And then everybody felt that way, so it didn't last very long. We all went back to normal. But yeah, but Kirby just wanted to direct. That was Kirby wanted to write and direct.
Gotcha.
Even back in 2000, he was like, "I want to write and direct." That's all he wanted to do.
Yeah, gotcha. So yeah, he had released. He's over at Brazen Animation right now, but he had released. What's it called?
Well, I know he was in New Zealand for a bit.
Yeah, it's it was called Beast of Burden, but they ended up calling it something else.
I lost touch on it, so I'm not sure.
I cannot think right now.
It's okay.
I'm terrible. Mosley, there we go. I was looking for it.
Mosley.
So yeah, so he directed in that one in Australia. So it's his product. I think he's even mentioned even way back then.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah, because he was writing something way back then.
Yeah, and I think that was it. He said it was about 12 or 11 years into the process. So
sounds about right. That's cool.
Yeah, what's that?
Good for him, man.
Yeah. Really fun podcast. So yeah, just remember those 2 in particular. Just out of curiosity, Mike, what are you enjoying? You know, like I mentioned here, this has been 10 years, or actually 11 years this year of teaching. What are you still enjoying about that process and working at iAnimate?
2 things, which is funny. It's funny you asked that, because I have 2 answers for you. For one, honestly, one is these kids, and sometimes adults, older adults, they remind me of why I love this stuff. Like, they keep me fresh. They keep me excited, because I love talking about it.
That's great.
And I remember specific nights where I was like, just feeling like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm kind of sick. I don't feel great. I'm going to cancel class. Then I'll be like, no, let's just push through and get it done. And I'll go in there and I'm just fired up within like 10 minutes. Right. It's like, and I feel great. And I'm just like, yeah, this is why I do this. Because
nice.
they remind me of why this stuff is so awesome, you know, and we're all sharing this passion and you want to be artists, you know, and that's unique. It's a unique skill set, you know. So that's one thing that it's selfish. They feed me as well, right? But the other thing too is I tend to teach entry-level body mechanics classes because I have this weird passion about tearing everybody down back to basics. Because
Gotcha.
I see people come to my classes all the time with bad habits, not able to, you know, move a character with weight and physicality. And so I spend a great deal of time, and it's frustrating because a lot of times my students don't end up walking out of my classes with high levels of like polished shots, because I'm spending a lot of time trying to break them down to, listen, if you just do this process for right now, you will see, I mean, I guarantee you'll see results if you just listen to me, just do this one thing. And so I spent a lot of time talking about posing like crazy, and then blocking. I spent a lot of time on blocking and posing. In fact, one of my favorite stories in the entire world is Benjamin Hammond.
Okay.
So about 2.5 years ago, he was in my class. He got in my workshop 3 class somehow. And we did our first review, and I saw his work and I was like, how'd you get in my class? You know, the first thing I said.
He slipped through the cracks, huh?
I said, because you don't know how to do anything, you know. He goes, well, they told me to come in this class. And I said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 2 choices. One, you can stay here and do what I tell you, because I'm going to help you. Or 2, you can go to my workshop 2 class and do what I tell you. You know, and he goes, well, I'll just stay here since I'm already here. And I said, great. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to spend 11 weeks doing poses, nothing else, no animation, just poses. Do you agree? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And I said, okay, we'll see. And he stuck it out 11 weeks with me just doing poses. And then he came back for a second class. And I said, okay, now we're going to block shots. And so we blocked shots. And then he did the 2 workshops with me, and then he couldn't afford to do a 3rd class. And so I said, okay, well, no matter what you do from this moment forward, try to find ways to hold yourself accountable, because it's easy to slip back into life and just kind of fall by the wayside.
Right.
Right. And so you have to find ways to hold yourself accountable. So this kid for 2 years showed me his work every week for 2 years and kept animating for 2 years. And then 6 months ago, put his first reel together and got an animation job, you know.
That's awesome.
And right now he's doing tests for 3 AAA game studios right now. So yeah.
That is so rad, man. That is so cool.
Yeah. And so he's like my proof of like, yeah, if you just stick to the process,
Yeah.
you will. Now your timeline is your timeline.
Right.
Maybe you comprehend things a little bit quicker or slower, or maybe you have less time during the week, but he's proof that he just stuck to it. He's more special than anybody else, you know, but what he had was work ethic.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
So I love that. And so that's, to me, I'm just like, what can I do? Like when I'm working with these students, I'm looking at each one of them and wondering, okay, where is your fault at in terms of your process? Are you just splining through things and you're just rushing into the scene, or, you know, are your poses weak, but your timing's good? I've got students all over the place where I've got a girl right now who's got a really good handle on timing and spacing, but her poses are weak. So I'm like, all right, time to play with poses, right? And so we just get into it, and it's so much fun.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah. So,
and that's why I love that live feedback that we do too, because it affords this kind of stuff here.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part. In fact, what I love about iAnimate and why I wanted to teach here was because not necessarily grading allows me the freedom to customize the curriculum and the course for every student.
Right.
I will spend the time. Like if I see a student struggling, I'll customize the entire 11 weeks to fit them, you know, and I love having that freedom. And so, because obviously it's like, hey, how can I impact each one of them
uniquely,
the best way possible, uniquely for 11 weeks, right? And hopefully get them pumped up along the way, right?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah, that's fantastic, man.
it's a challenge.
Very, very cool, Mike. Well, again, this was, like I said, this was special for me just to be able to get you in on this.
In a while.
It's been a while. It's good to see you. We don't have our annual CTN right now, so this is the closest we can get, but I really, really appreciate you taking the time. This has been some great stuff. And then just again, this is why we have instructors like you. You're very passionate about animation and our students in particular. Yeah. And so just again, thank you so much for your time and all that you do here.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I appreciate your time as well. And it's fantastic talking to you. It's been too long.
Very cool.
Hopefully we'll get back to a CTN soon.
I hope so.
All right.
All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, take care.
Take care. Bye.